Hi, I'm Paul from the British English Hub. How are you getting on? Today I'm going to be talking about making suggestions. I'm going to be teaching you some expressions on how to make a suggestion to another person, either formally or informally. So I'm going to give you a number of examples, and we're going to start off with one example, which is firstly the questions. These are questions to basically ask somebody else what plans they have, or basically what plans they might be considering. Okay, so firstly, what do you fancy doing later? Now, one thing I want to say is the pronunciation do you. We say what do you fancy doing later? What do you fancy doing later? What would you like to do this weekend? What should we do tonight? What's the plans for next week? Or what's the plans for tomorrow? Or what's the plans for later, for example? And any suggestions, ideas for tonight? Any suggestions, ideas for tomorrow? Etc. etc. Okay? So look at the first one to begin with. We should plus verb. Now this is not a strong suggestion. Okay? And so make sure you don't emphasize should. So if you do emphasize it, the meaning changes slightly. Okay, so you've got to be careful not to do that. So we should watch a film tonight. We should grab a bite. Grab a bite is a colloquial term meaning have something to eat. We use that quite often in the UK. We should make a YouTube video. I should look for another job. Okay, so these are kind of formal and informal expressions used with the modal verb should. Okay, the next one is we could plus verb, which is slightly weaker than should. Um, it's slightly more kind of middle of the road type suggestion. You know, maybe we should, maybe we shouldn't, etc., etc. Okay, so we'll look at some examples of these. I could watch something on Netflix. We're all thinking of that. Okay, from time to time. We could get a takeaway. We could go to the pub tonight. That would be nice. A couple of drinks. I could go to the West End this Saturday. The West End is a term we use for central London. If you've ever been to London, Leicester Square, for instance, Covent Garden, that is considered to be the West End. We could do a trip out of London this weekend. Okay, that's a great idea. We could go to another town, possibly. You know, maybe somewhere on the coast, like Bournemouth or Brighton, or maybe even Torquay. Okay. Next phrase is how about or what about. Now these are synonymous. Okay, these are synonymous phrases. You could use either how about or what about. Now we use the gerund for this. Okay, which is a verb ing. It's a more polite and often it's always phrased as a question. Okay, so let's look at some examples of these. So what about doing some shopping? How about watching a match later? Football match, meaning. What about doing a trip to Brighton? How about making a pizza? What about cleaning the flat a bit on Sunday? Okay, so again, this is a very common phrase used, you know, by most native speakers, really. Okay, another phrase we use is fancy plus gerund. Again, gerund being that verb plus ing. So this is kind of synonymous to how about or what about. It's polite and informal, phrased as a question as well. Let's look at some examples of these. Fancy going to the beach today? Fancy having dinner out tomorrow? Fancy doing the cooking later? Fancy seeing a movie a bit later? Fancy doing a YouTube video with me tomorrow or with me today, as I'm doing right now? Okay, now with fancy, you can actually drop the gerund, which is the word below in red. We can drop that, and I'll give you some examples of this. So using fancy, in some cases you can drop the gerund to make your suggestion a little bit more informal. So here's some examples. This is used in everyday English, basically. Fancy the beach today? Fancy dinner out tomorrow? Fancy a late meal around 9? Fancy a movie a bit later? Fancy a pizza this evening? Okay, and that's very, very commonly used in the UK. Okay, next one is why don't we plus verb. Most polite form of suggestion and it's phrased as a question like some of the others. So here are some examples. So why don't we go to see a film? Why don't you go out and see a friend? Why don't we have an early night tonight? Why don't you cook tomorrow? Why don't we have a picnic tomorrow afternoon? It's going to be really, really sunny. Okay, great time to have a picnic when the weather's nice and warm, which is not often the case in the UK. Maybe the occasional day in the summer, that kind of thing. Okay, and another expression we use is let's plus verb. Now again, informal, it's synonymous with fancy or what about or how about. Again, it's good sometimes to vary phrases. It shows your kind of range of vocabulary in the UK, or grammatical use or whatever. So but used more spontaneously and immediately. This is a kind of spontaneous phrase we use, okay? More often than not, okay? So let's have a look at some examples again. Let's go for a walk. Let's stay at home tonight. Let's go to a restaurant. Let's have a barbecue or nice roasted chicken. Let's take the bus there, or let's take the rubbish out. Okay, so these are kind of immediate, spontaneous kind of suggestions that we can make within the next day or so. Okay, or few hours, more precisely. Okay. Another expression we use is shall we plus verb, more formal and sometimes used in work-based situations such as meetings. Again, so shall we meet tomorrow? Shall we start the task on Friday? Shall we meet next week? Shall we take a bus to the station or walk? Shall we stop the meeting? Okay. Again, these are kind of slightly more formalized expressions, to try and convey an idea or a proposal or something. So there you go. So let's have a quick look at the summary. Okay, so here we are. So these are all different phrases that sort of, that convey making a request. Okay, so we should eat out tonight. We could have a pizza. Now these two are with the verb, the infinitive, what we call the infinitive verb. Okay, how about, what about going, which is a gerund, the verb plus ing to the pub. Fancy going for a meal. And we can drop the gerund there, the verb ing, and say fancy a meal instead, which is a little bit more informal. Okay, why don't we go to the beach? Again, another informal expression. Let's have a party, immediate or spontaneous, okay, which is again an informal expression. Or shall we end the meeting, which is more formalized. Okay, and that's just summing up of the language focus today. I hope you enjoyed that, and until next time, thank you very, very much for meeting. I will speak to you soon. Take care. Bye bye.